Um,
Hi, Linda.
hello, Linda. I think, Beth, you said we had 12 people registered and we have 12 people on.
Wow.
So I think let's get going. Our first thing is this is the inaugural meeting of the League of Women Voters of Colorado Elections Task Force. And I know there is a lot of expertise on elections in this Zoom room. And so if you all could do introductions, your name, if you have a local league, what your local league is, and what drew you to this meeting. And who would like to start? And then whoever starts can name the next. I'll start and then I'll pick on the next person and then please tag someone else from there. I'm Maud Narol. My local league is Arapahoe Douglas. I was on the election security group that got an developed an election security position, studied, developed a position, and got it passed by the Colorado League and used this last session. I'm also vice chair for action and advocacy on the state board. Oh, and Farah is here. Greetings. Next person, Marianne.
Marianne Bird. I'm from Jeffco, Northwest, and I don't have as many credentials as you do, so that's just about me.
Do you have do you have a particular interest in elections? That drew you to this?
I have been on housing for several years, and I just decided that when you started to revamp how you work things, that I might get involved in elections also. So, and I'll pass to Linda Rockwell.
I'm Linda Rockwell. I'm a longtime member of the Mountain Parks unit of the Jefferson County League, and long been interested in elections and politics. So,
anything in particular in elections?
well, if I have one goal, it's to try to promote the all-mail ballot elections around the country. I mean, we have so much to be proud of here in Colorado, and when you read all this stuff about the delayed counting and all the glitches that other places have, you know, I don't know why the whole country doesn't just jump on the all-mail ballot bandwagon.
Yeah.
So I tried a year ago to see if there wasn't something I could, well, maybe it was 2 years ago, to try to see if there wasn't something I could do to motivate the league in this direction, and it didn't go anywhere. So.
Okay.
Yeah, real or imagined glitches.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I should have said one of my interests is special district elections, and I was shocked to see that our special districts do not do all mail ballots.
Some of them do.
Some of them do, but
Yeah. The West Metro fire serves 200,000 people in Jefferson County, and something like 286 people voted in their election.
okay.
So, you know, but on the other hand, you know, I lived in Evergreen for a long time, and the Evergreen Fire District had a lot of issues in their most recent election, and 20% of the eligible people voted.
Super.
Which is
Who are
not
you
bad.
tagging? Who are you tagging to introduce next?
I'm Jerry. I'll go.
Okay, thank you, Jerry.
I've had a long time interest in elections. My first job when I joined the league in the 70s was voter service. So at my local level. And that's sort of where I ended my big time involvement in elections by serving on the state board as voter service chair for a number of years. Most recently, I've worked on the white paper committee and maintained an active interest in all things related to elections. So there you go.
Okay. Who do you tag?
Oh, who do I tag? I don't know, Hannah Pogue. Hannah?
Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm the operations manager for League of Women Voters of Colorado. I just graduated college in May, so I can kind of tell you my age. So myself voting is relatively newer. I'm very interested in that. And to kind of echo what's already been said, the mail-in ballots, I think, is a really interesting concept that Colorado has. And I think it would be very cool to see that more widespread within different states. I will go ahead and tag Neil.
Have to unmute. There we go. Hi, I'm Neil McBurnett. I've been in the league about 20 years, a little more than that, I forget. I've been active on elections integrity issues and especially election auditing since serving as an election judge in Boulder in 2002. And I worked with the clerk in Boulder to do the first risk limiting audit in Colorado, and then with the legislature to require them across the state, and then with the Secretary of State to implement them. So I wrote some of the code. I'm a computer scientist, and I'm active nationally on such issues. And I worked with Maud and Gaithia and an amazing team, lots of you on the call here, on the Colorado position on election security that we adopted last year. So I'm looking forward to helping Colorado continue to serve as the best model for the nation in how to do all those things. And we have some work to do. How about Joanne?
Hi, my name's Joanne, and I am new to the league. And one of the reasons I wanted to get into the League of Women Voters was because of elections. I've always been very involved, and I'd really like to see what other areas I can help with within the league. So I'm excited to be here. Thanks.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. I choose Susan Stark.
Hi. I'm a member of the Denver League, and my interest in voting started when I was an election, a poll watcher for the Democratic Party in 2020. And then because that was so interesting, I served at the election division office in Denver and just found it fascinating and exciting. And then worked with Karen and Jerry and Stacy Johnson to write the white paper on Colorado elections. And I just recently, just a couple of weeks ago, served as an election judge because I wanted to kind of complete the circle and get the whole experience. And it was a great experience. I would encourage any of you who can tolerate 13-hour days to be an election judge. It was just great. And when I hear about what happens in other states and how election judges are being vilified in other states, and I can't tell you the huge percentage of people after they deposited their ballot in the box said, "Thank you so much for being here. This was so easy. We really appreciate you." So glad to live in Colorado. How about, let's see who hasn't done it. Celeste.
Hi, everybody. I'm Celeste Landry from the Boulder County League. I'm interested in many, many, many different election issues. The one I'm mostly associated with is voting methods, but I'm also interested in ballot access. I've argued in front of the title board on that issue. I got part of a bill passed through the Colorado legislature about ballot access, which means candidates being able to get on the ballot. I worked with Karen Sheik and other people here in the LAC on electronic balloting, but only for people who have print disabilities. I've been involved with the National Popular Vote. I was a presidential elector in 2016, replacing the faithless elector. And then that case ended up going all the way to the Supreme Court. And that was all very exciting. Happy to be part of this group. And I will pick Christina.
Hi, I'm Christina. I'm with the Jefferson County League, and I have two interests in that. I think we need to promote Colorado's voting methods across the nation and see what we can do about how pathetic some of the other states are. The other thing I am passionately interested in, though, is special districts. In February of 2021, the Jeffco League made a presentation on special districts, which unfortunately was greeted with kind of a hum attitude in Jeffco. But there are 292 special districts in Jeffco. And as I did the research, and there's something like 4,400 statewide. All special district elections are not governed by the SOS. They are governed by the Department of Local Affairs. And that puts it in a whole different category. And they are a mess. In 2021, late 2021, FAIR joined our group, joined the Jeffco League, and she came in passionate about metro districts especially. And it's reinstigated my interest in it because they are subject to tremendous abuse. And I will go to Barb.
Hi, Barbara Dungy, Arapahoe and Douglas counties. I got involved in League in about 1970 because back then in the dark ages, you couldn't vote until you were 21. And I missed, with my late birthday in November, I missed the deadline. And what League in Minneapolis did back in those days was they dispersed all the members to precincts. And when the election judges had counted the votes, we called them in to the media so that it could be on the 10 o'clock news.
Mm-hmm.
And those were the days. Those were the days when, National League was doing candidate forums for president and, all sorts of things. We've evolved over the years. I got really concerned in the early 2000s, and I think I probably ran into Neil at that point because there were some things going on, especially nationally, but not just nationally, with voting integrity. And you might remember in about maybe, was it 2004, where Kenneth Blackwell in Ohio put the election data on actually a religious organization's private server. And so there were some things that really concerned me greatly. I'm from Minnesota where elections are clean, squeaky clean, and I'm happy to be in Colorado where we're rational and have some really good rules. There also was, I found through volunteering with some Colorado groups, some verified voting groups, there also was a situation in about 2008, I think it was, where we had a possible vulnerability for a man-in-the-middle attack. We had a consultant down in Highlands Ranch who at that time, the Colorado Secretary of State appointed to gather data from small counties who didn't have resources, computer resources to really do a lot of data. And so all that data went through this consultant, and he put the data on his personal business server in Highlands Ranch. And I did not like that because I saw that as a vulnerability that, people shouldn't have control of voting data before it goes from the county clerk to the Secretary of State's office.
Right.
So, but now today things are good, and I really like, and I agree that we should export our process here in Colorado. I also am a big proponent of publicizing and getting people involved in special districts. In fact, the deadline comes up every year in January or February, and I always put that on our calendar for our league. And actually, I think I put it on the state calendar, truthfully. But, you know, so that people know to run and get involved, because you're absolutely right. If you've just got very few people controlling the special district decisions and not always communicating what they're doing, because the Division of Local Affairs doesn't always hold them to high standards. We need more people involved because this affects them financially, whether it's water, sewage, whatever. So anyway, I'm just so glad we're doing this. Thank you. And I need to
Karen.
call on somebody.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see. Andrea, I don't think, have we called on you, Andrea?
No, I haven't chimed in yet. I'm Andrea Wilkins. I'm the legislative liaison with the State League. And my main goal of attending this meeting and all the task force meetings really is to tune into the priorities identified by this group to help incorporate that into the State League's advocacy agenda and the work of the LAC, and to also facilitate connections between the LAC and the task forces, and just provide general support in whatever areas are needed to, kind of help get the word out about what we feel is important and to take action wherever we can. Oh, and I will, I'll hop over to Beth. Let's stick with staff for a minute.
Thank you, Andrea. I'm just going to repeat what Andrea said. That's why I'm here, is to provide support during this inaugural meeting and figure out how staff can support. I'm Beth Hendricks. I'm the Executive Director of the League of Women Voters of Colorado. And next week is my 4th anniversary. Barb Winnery.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Sorry I was late. I was trying to run a few errands before this meeting. It's a little chilly up here in Greeley. I'm from Greeley-Weld County. I also serve on the board as one of the voter service co-directors. And I've actually, ever since I've joined the league, I've been involved with voter service. Actually, that's what's got me involved with it. And especially because I really feel it's this important privilege that we have here in the United States. And I think most of my role and responsibility has been in education and making sure people understand about our election system and how valuable it is, but also what they don't know. Because when you're on the front lines of education, you find out how people misunderstand a lot of things. And maybe some things aren't working the way we think they're working, especially when you're registering voters. And I've run across a few glitches in that area. So I'm interested just always in election security, but also in the different components. Are they working? Does the public understand, especially underserved populations, and how we can better reach them and help them to understand how to vote and what it's all about? And ballot issues. We've had some, up here in Greeley, we've had some interesting situations where people have put ballot measures on the ballot, and sometimes they don't always come out the way they wanted them to be put on the ballot. So I don't know. I'm just interested in what's happening on the local level when we talk about ballot issues and what the developments are at the local level. So with that, who else hasn't? Okay. I'm sorry, Barb Dungy's name is in front of you, so go ahead.
Well, I'm Betty Sealand. I'm with the Jeffco League, and we're getting started with our interest groups and elections as one of them. And Marianne and Linda have signed up to be in that group. And so I'm really interested how the state can interact with local leagues and get the message spread around, and how they can, help each other and do a good job of informing our members and working with legislation as needed. And really the coordination part between the state and the local is one thing I'm really interested in. Fair?
Yes, I've had COVID, so I'm not sounding very good. I got interested in, well, I've only been in the league a little over a year, but I became politically active back in the 80s, just by being an election judge. I've probably been an election judge 10 times. And Susan, when you commented on yours being your first time, that's my go-to remark to people that have any questions about election integrity.
Exactly.
Is I say, well, have you ever
Right.
been an election judge? Then
Right.
you know, this look, because if you haven't been, and I, fortunately, somebody I exercise with, I said that to her once, and she went and was an election judge, and she came back saying, wow, I understand how you feel. So, but as far as league action, I think, yeah, spreading our voting methods here is good, but I also would like to see publicly funded elections and get all money out of politics. I would love if the league could take that on. That's a pretty big ask. But locally, I got interested in metro districts because I live in one. And if you don't live in one, you probably are indifferent. But it's become, I think it's being misused. I think it's being used in a way it was never intended. The law, it's now a way of developers funding their projects, and with no absolutely no liability on their part. and you were talking about why only 200 and some people voted in that election or 65. Linda, I'm going to do a quick screen share. It'll just take a minute. I'm going to show you how people are basically informed about special district elections and metro district elections, at least prior to a law that was passed that now changed metro districts, but not the rest of them. But just quickly, where is it? That must be it right there. Oh, no, that's not it. Doggone it. I thought this would be easy to pull this up. Just a second. Oh, okay, there we go. Can you see that yet or not?
No.
Okay. Screen, new share. All right, there we go.
No.
You still can't see it?
Yeah. There's an article.
Okay, can you see the thing on the post?
Mm-hmm.
All right. This is how people have been informed about elections, by little tiny pieces of paper in an information center, by posting on a post out in the middle of a field that you'd have to be on a horse to see, or in the fine print of the local small newspapers that are used. Can you see all three of those?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'll stop my share now. So anyway, so because of my interest in metro districts, I joined an ad hoc committee of other disenchanted metro district members across the metro area. And now we have been joined by people up in the mountains also. But we have been working on legislation for the past 2 years, and 2 years ago, or year before last, legislation session before last, they passed what was called the Special District Transparency Act. Well, it's about as transparency, as my hand. It just gives the appearance of transparency. But one of the things that we lobbied for to get changed in the bill was that the way they inform people about elections. Okay, I showed you the way that has been used. So nobody ever knew there was an election coming up or that they could run. So we did get a requirement in. We asked for a requirement that everyone be informed by email or snail mail that they can run for election or that there's one coming up. Unfortunately, everybody was afraid of that because it was going to be so expensive. And so it was only limited to metro districts. So now with metro districts, and we have people calling us saying, I never knew I could run for election. It has been a real eye opener for people and where people are running, but it doesn't apply to all the other special districts. That's why, Linda, people don't know about it. That's why they're not running, is because they're getting informed through ways that they never see. And so that's my big passion. I've been very disappointed in our county commissioners in Jefferson County. They seem to be very pro-developer without much thought behind what they're doing. And very disappointed at the state level as well, because there's a huge developer lobby that has been fighting us every step of the way. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Fair. Karen, you have been admirably patient.
Oh. Well, we've got a nice sized group with a lot of very diverse reasons for participating, which is wonderful. I am most interested in this group. I'm a member of the Montezuma County League, and past president of the State League, and am now serving on the board in the capacity of local league support. But during my 2 years as president, I had the great good fortune of being able to work with Maud and Neil and Gaithia on the election security position. I was terribly disappointed that LWV US chose not to support us in that. And then I also had the opportunity to work with Susan and Jerry and Stacy Johnson in writing the Colorado elections white paper. So I've been immersed in election security and in Colorado elections, and also was involved in promoting and supporting the National Popular Vote, which passed in 2020. So I'm quite passionate about elections. My focus at this point, and I have to admit, my eyes have been opened by some of the areas of concern that the rest of you have expressed, but my primary focus at this point is sharing how good the Colorado election system is with other states, and helping to share information with leagues in those states as they lobby their own legislators to improve their election systems. And I feel that there is more than one way to skin a cat. And so I'm hoping that we can reach out to other states and get support for Colorado's election security position, so that the next time LWV US has a convention, we can get that passed to the national level, because I think that there is a great need for that, as has been proven over the last several years. So those are my areas of interest. Thanks, Maud.
Thank you.
I'd like to say a couple things. I didn't hear Karen say that she's the former mayor of Cortez. Did you say that and I just missed it? And then the other thing is Jerry Cummins used to be city clerk, I believe. Centennial, maybe. Anyway, thought people might want to know that information too.
Thanks, Celeste.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Has Joanne introduced herself?
Yes.
Yes, I did that, yeah.
Beth, do you want to talk about the purpose or positions or some other ideas that other folks have floated? Where is Beth? Is Beth still on? We lost Beth. Okay.
I did.
In that case, I will share screen just for a sec. And there's kind of a generic purpose statement. But coordinating with local leagues, other organizations, Legislative Action Committee. Celeste is on the Legislative Action Committee. Andrea and I are, and organize webinars, workshops, presentations, advocacy, And any questions on the kind of basic purpose?
Since
This is-
several people mentioned that we'd like to be able to spread the good news of
Yes.
how wonderful our elections are to other states, could we add that since that came up a number of times?
That did come up a number of times, and I think that is, yeah, definitely something that this group has interest in doing. So, yeah. Yeah, no, this is not cast in concrete. This is just a generic starting point. Jerry.
Am I on mute? No. I'm going to pick up where Betty Sealand's comments left off, and maybe she asked for information to pass along to the membership. And I'm thinking that we might just want to do a couple of paragraphs of how well the last election went in a few weeks ago. And it's not quite, all the data isn't in yet, but just pass that along to the membership and just in terms of a report, status report.
How well?
How the election worked. I mean, we can thank statistics. We have somewhere around 4 million registered voters, 2.5 or 2.6 million voted. All the counties had, I guess, no problems. I haven't heard of any. Maybe some of the rest of you have.
Yeah, we can add something to this week's e-newsletter.
Right, and
For
then
sure.
the audits and all of those are still, that data still
Yeah.
coming in.
Yeah, particularly with the audits, I have a lot to report on there. So I think, and we're not certified yet and so on. So I don't know if we'll be ready to say something this week about that, but for the rest, we're good.
And I was even thinking January.
Oh, great. I mean, I personally would prefer to wait until we have some more stats in, including about our own effectiveness in educating voters, like vote 411 stats, things like that.
Yeah.
Not to make it all about us, but yeah.
Why not?
Great.
Super. It looks like, sounds like we have, like Neil will probably send something to Beth. Neil, what is your timing for putting something?
Well, I actually, it depends on how we want to do this. I mean, I can give my own thoughts, but I see, in my perception and that of most of my colleagues, the audits in Colorado have actually lost some important elements over the last 5 years. And so, I want to both say they're still better than anybody else in the country, and say that in order for the public to really benefit from them, we need to fix some of the things that have been broken recently and move forward. So, and I'd love for this group to talk about that and present on that. So, rather than having kind of individuals weigh in for all of this, I don't know when our next meeting is or what the timing ought to be, but how do we divide stuff that's just straightforward facts or data and improvements that we're looking for?
Yeah.
Neil, is that something that you would be willing to maybe share with the group, some of the areas that you and your colleagues, where you and your colleagues feel that our audits are falling down on, so that all of us have a clear understanding, and then maybe Andrea and legislative or the action and advocacy can look at how we might be able to approach our legislators, if that's where we need to start to get some of these things fixed.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm proposing. And I didn't want to, launch into it right now while we're still kind of looking
Yeah.
at the agenda, but I've put together a document and shared it with a couple of you and am eager to do that whenever the group finds useful. And sooner rather than later is fine. I just didn't want to take over.
Okay, thank you. So a presentation to this group, or maybe one that is noticed to league members in general on our calendar, so that other people who might be interested in risk limiting audits could join in. Barb.
I don't know if this is the right topic to bring up, or if it's the right niche. But anyway, I mentioned it offhand at the board meeting because we were kind of doing an analysis of the election, but I was really interested in the redistricting piece of, what did the redistricting commission really accomplish its goals looking back at this election in terms of the competitiveness of the districts? And then secondly, I know, well, this is about voting too, of, whether what the turnout was and getting into some of those things. There's some areas where there's lower turnout than others, but those are some questions I had. And I don't know if this is the right place to process that, but I thought I'd mention it.
The former state board member who had worked on the mathematician from the college in Colorado Springs.
Beth
Cog.
Yeah, did a presentation on the redistricting results.
Yeah, she did. I think they did it at the last legislative conference.
Yeah, sometime ago. And I think competitiveness was fairly low on the
list
of priorities for the redistricting commissions.
Yeah, I have a bunch of thoughts on redistricting, because actually another one of my interests for even longer than election security is voting methods. So first of all, there's a member of League of Women Voters, Boulder, member of our voting methods task force, Jen Cleland, who is an expert on redistricting. She and her students provided data to the redistricting commission. One of her students is actually on one of the commissions. And she's done presentations for us, and I'm sure could do presentations for others. What I would suggest is that area is most ripe for discussion in another task force that I don't remember hearing mentioned today here. There is also a voting methods task force of the Colorado League that has been meeting for a couple of months that Celeste has been doing a fabulous job of leading. And the fact that, I mean, it is just a mathematical fact, and Jen Cleland is a math professor, I forget what she's a professor of, but she's a whiz at University of Colorado, points out that you just can't solve fair representation via redistricting, because you're always trading one thing for another, as others have mentioned. So what we really need is proportional representation. We need a voting method that assures that if 30% of the population thinks something, then they should have about 30% of the legislature or the city council or whatever. And you can't solve that kind of problem with districts. So I'm passionate, very passionate about that issue, and we're working hard on it. And I just think that it makes sense actually to have the two task forces that we have now, one focused on kind of the underlying methods and fairness, and another focused on kind of the implementation and so on. At least that's my thought.
And Neil, you're right. There has been talk about proportional representation in the alternative voting task force. And Celeste, unless your hair stands straight up, I'm thinking that's something that the alternative voting one is going to be taking up. So Barb.
And on December 12th, we're having a short presentation about high-level talk about what exactly is proportional representation. And Jen is giving that talk, and she's a great speaker. So everybody's welcome to tune in.
Would
for
you
just
post that in the chat?
Sure,
Thank
I
you.
will.
Okay, thank you.
Celeste, is that or Beth or Hannah, is that on the state?
Yes, it is.
As a with
It's on-
with the topic?
It's on, it just says Alternative Voting Methods Task Force. I don't know, Beth Hendricks, or Hannah, if it says, we're talking about proportional representation and the presidential primary RCV bill. That's a possibility for the next session.
Right. And I hope we should probably mention there, because it's not obvious to people that would see it on the site. We should probably talk about redistricting there, or at least, addressing problems with districting in general. I was actually also on one of the League of Women Voters representatives to the group that ran the initiatives that got the existing nonpartisan redistricting proposals statewide adopted. And at the time, I talked to them also about proportional representation. And of course, it wasn't within the remit of the group there, but we've been trying to pitch, both the fact that it's good to have good districts, but you really can't solve the fundamental problems via choice of a redistricting commission. You need proportional representation. Thanks.
So
we can easily change the title of that meeting if you just send us what you want it to say.
I think you can leave the title the same, but the description I'm writing up right now, and you can just copy and paste it.
Great.
Fantastic. Thank you. We've got a bunch. Yeah, sorry. Betty.
I have a question. I read something that our representative Brianna Titone sent to us on Colorado hybrid proportional representation. It was by Jesse Cummon, and I found it very confusing. I could not understand it. It just was so complicated. In your presentation, what kind of level is this presentation going to be? Is it going to be understandable?
Yes.
Is it really workable? Is it really workable with just one state doing it? That sort of thing. Anyway, those are my concerns about it.
I'm very interested in the whole structural thing and the viability. And so that's a big, important thing for me, and also for Jen, and she's giving the talk. She's not going to get into the mechanics of it so much. Jesse Cuman's idea of this hybrid proportional is fairly complex. I don't think Americans are ready for it. And we probably won't talk very much about it, but Gary Swing or Jesse Cuman might be at the event. Gary Swing ran for Secretary of State in November, basically on this hybrid proportional idea. But
yeah,
it was a very interesting election, and he didn't get. I'm very proud of the league for having him and the other minor party candidates be part of a debate. But other than the league, I don't think he got much traction.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Jesse is very passionate and has a very European focus and has a very complex approach. And I agree, doesn't necessarily explain it very well. Jen, I think, will give you a really great, clear understanding of why most of the world's democracies use a form of proportional representation for their legislatures, and why it's so critical, and why Adams was talking about the importance of it when we were, just forming the nation and so on. So I encourage you to not.
Maud, I think we should probably at some point talk about special districts and metro districts in particular, because that seems to be a topic of huge interest. I do want to say we have some ideas about letting 17, almost 18-year-olds vote in primaries again. So we should, we might want to at least mention that, but I think we should spend a lot more, we don't have that much time. We should spend a lot of talking about metro districts and what we want to do going forward.
Right, absolutely. I would say the next thing, while we still have everyone on, is to set the next meeting. And then, yes, you're right, we should talk. Nobody here has mentioned 17-year-olds voting in, who would be 18 at the general election, voting in primaries. I'm hearing two big interests. One is special districts, and one is publicizing Colorado's election system to other states and encouraging other states to adopt it as the two biggest themes. But when do we want to meet next? And I'm going to encourage people to bring a friend next time. Do we want to be once a month? Do we want to skip December? Do we want to be every other week? And one possibility is that we have, the way the climate task force does, have two separate subgroups, one working on each of these two major topics.
I'd encourage us, especially because we're trying to put information out for others, I'd encourage us to meet more regularly. I'd do every 2 weeks or something like that, and potentially have, I don't know, sort of like we did with the election security position, have some subgroups that can work on proposals for the bigger group and presentations and stuff. You've already talked about an auditing presentation, and I'd love to put that together and try to get, as honestly for me, as quickly as possible, a good summary of everything that we did well and the areas for improvement that we have, in order to feed into the recommendations to other states, because we have so much good to share, but people are copying or doing even worse than we are in some of our areas that, that I'll elaborate on, that I'd be eager to move forward on those things.
Okay. I'm thinking of if a presentation is geared to LWBCO as a whole, it should probably be an evening rather than a morning. Karen.
I was going to say, I agree with that. I think you're going to get more participation. I like Neil's idea of meeting a little bit more often to see if we can't get this fast tracked. One thing I'd like to throw out, because I know we've talked about this ever since 17-year-olds lost the ability to participate in primaries, about moving forward on that. Andrea, where do we stand on that? And is this something that we need to kind of get on the ball with now, so that whatever it is that we have to do in order to, if it has to be put on the ballot or whatever has to happen to make that, to accomplish that, what kind of a timeline are we looking at? And perhaps that could be a subcommittee group of this committee.
Yeah, I think timeline wise, I do think, it is a more urgent issue for us. I think the political climate, not to make it a partisan issue, because I think, from a league standpoint, we're firmly of the belief that expanded voter access absolutely should not be a partisan issue. But the unfortunate reality is that it is sort of viewed through that lens. So that being said, I think that we are currently in a political climate, given the party control of the Colorado legislature and the margins that exist, where we stand a better chance than we have in the past of being able to get a referred measure for a constitutional amendment on the ballot, particularly in the House, where that 2/3 majority is really probably there in terms of pure numbers. So I think that that's one thing that's working in our favor. A group of us have done some talking on this recently. Celeste has drafted some language. She's been active on the issue for a while now. And if I'm recalling correctly, Celeste, I think you included that in the agenda. Or Maude, was that included on the agenda that people received? So you may actually have access to that in front of you. I'm not sure if that's the case, but we can get into a discussion about some of the language.
Did people get an agenda for this meeting? I'm
No.
not sure they did.
No, but I saw it on the one when Maude shared her screen. Andrea, could I ask you about this? Why couldn't this just simply be a law passed by the legislature? Why does it have to be a constitutional amendment?
Well, the complicated thing about this is that 17-year-olds lost the right to vote, that 17-year-olds that would be 18 by the general, they lost the right to vote in primary elections with the passage of Amendment 76, which was really focused primarily on ensuring that only citizens were voting. But it included additional language in there that the Office of Legislative Legal Services is determined was limiting, in the sense that it also made reference to only 18-year-olds who are citizens. I'm not quoting it exactly, but that limiting language around who has the ability to vote in Colorado was deemed to have taken away the right of 17-year-olds to vote. So if we want to change that, that is why we would, want to seek that referred measure, to seek an amendment to make that adjustment. Celeste, did you want to comment on that too?
Yes. What I wanted to say is the Legislative Legal Services may have made some ruling on it, but I don't know if, I think the definitive ruling was the Attorney General. The Secretary of State asked the Attorney General what the interpretation was, and the Attorney General said, oh, this applies to anybody under the age of 18 also. Whereas if the Attorney General had said, no, this doesn't apply to kids under the age of 18, then it'd be a whole different situation. It's all based on that. So, a different tactic would be to sue and get the Attorney General to change their interpretation, and the Secretary of State would be happy to let 17-year-olds vote because that's what they've been doing. So.
Yeah, and the Secretary's office has absolutely communicated that they are very frustrated to have to do this. They're very supportive of 17-year-olds voting. We have talked to them about potential remedies, but I think in terms of strategy, whether that's potential lawsuit or seeking sponsorship for a referred measure that would put a constitutional question on the ballot for 2024. It would need to be 2024. I think we could pursue action now, and I think it would be in our interest to do so, just kind of jumping on things when we see a window of opportunity, and, acknowledging that these things sometimes take longer than, we think they should. But because Tabor-related issues are the focus of the ballot in odd years, if we were to seek a referred measure, it would be held over until 2024. Celeste, go ahead.
And another thing is that there's a newly elected state representative, Megan Lukens, who has been a history teacher and has been the sponsor of a school that won the Eliza Pickerel Rout Award for having the most number of students registered to vote. So she's totally in favor of this. And so she might be a nice person to sponsor this legislation. Another thing about this legislation, because it would be a referendum to go on the ballot to change the state constitution, it doesn't count as one of your 5 covered bills. You're only allowed 5 bills unless you get an exception, but this doesn't fall in that limit. So as you can see, we've discussed this a bit already.
It's actually an issue we've been trying to reach out a lot on, both to legislators, legislative leadership, key stakeholders within the community. It's kind of taken us a while to, feel like there was a realistic window to act. And as I mentioned earlier, I think just the political composition and, with Celeste's mention of Megan Lukens and, having somebody that's well-positioned and willing to be a sponsor, I think is a really good sign that, perhaps the time is right on this. If this is the avenue that we want to pursue, and we definitely wanted to get, a read from the task force members and hear from all of you about strategy and, priority and, just what you think, how you think we should go about this. I do think that there's a big mobilization role that our local league network will need to play in terms of educating around this and really trying to create kind of a groundswell for support so the legislature understands that this is a big priority issue for us. But it's definitely something that we've been thinking about for a while, and I think that there is an opportunity to act here.
And one thing I want to say is that a third of the states allow this for primary elections. So a third of the states are giving their voters more say than Colorado is. So Colorado is supposed to be a leader in election reform. And here we are dropping the ball. So
I'm glad you brought that up, Celeste. I had to refresh my memory on the states too, because I know, just top of head memory that it was a mix of states, but looking at the list, it really is a mix of states, which I think helps us with an argument that this should not be seen through a partisan lens. It's red states, it's blue states, it's a whole host of regional diversity in places that have have allowed this. So I think it's definitely something that we want to see, reenacted in Colorado. The other statistic that I had wanted to share back when we first started thinking about action around this issue, we had requested some information from the Secretary of State to kind of look at party affiliation of voter registration by party affiliation for those under 18. Obviously, we don't have a lot of data where this exists, but the statistics as of September 1, 2021, by far and away, the vast majority of registrants are affiliated or are unaffiliated, with around 48,000, around 5,900 registering as Republicans, and just a little over 5,000 registering as Democrats. So vast majority registering as unaffiliated, which of course is consistent with Colorado's voter composition in general, with the majority of the population being unaffiliated. But I think the reality is this often is seen as a partisan issue. I think what's happening in the country overall, and in terms of the party affiliation information that we're seeing, it's really not a partisan issue. This is really just about access.
So
Andrea, can you give those numbers again? Because I think they're tremendously.
Actually, we need to set our next meeting. And
Sorry,
we
Ron,
need
I
to,
forgot you did pose that question.
and we need to decide what we want to do at our next meeting. I'm hearing three threads. One is 17-year-olds, one is special districts. Both of those would be actions with our legislature. And the third is reaching out to other states about Colorado's election system.
I'm still putting auditing specifically in there. If
I know, I think that's a presentation from you to LWBCO, you and maybe some of your colleagues to LWBCO as a whole.
I'm thinking of it as an action of this group to make recommendations to the legislature and the Secretary of State's office based on,
but I'm thinking, I only heard one person mentioning audit, really excited about auditing. And I think the first step would probably be a presentation to the State League as a whole to see if there are more people who are also interested in working on that. I'm not saying it's not an important topic. I'm just hearing what people have said they're interested in.
Just wondering, Maud, if
Yeah.
maybe before we try to present it across the state, if it wouldn't be a good idea just to make sure that all the members of this committee are kind of up to speed on some of the things that Neil and his other professional colleagues are looking at as far as ways for us to improve our Colorado elections. And then once we've got a firm grasp of that at this committee's level, then we can go on to talk about how to share this information to a broader audience. And I think that would be, correct me if I'm wrong, Neil, I think that would be something, if Neil's willing to do it, that would be fairly easy. If he could get something to us, send it to Beth, she could send it out to those people that participated to just kind of give us a little bit of a foundation from which to work, and then have further discussion at our next meeting. Which do we want to have that in 2 weeks, or are you all thinking it would be better to wait until after the holiday? I know Neil to do sooner.
If we want to, I think if we want to push things that will happen, for things to happen in this legislative session, we probably need to meet. 2 weeks from now is December 14th. 2 weeks after that is December 28th. We might talk on the 28th and see if on the 14th and see if we want the 28th or January 4th.
Selfish request. Could we meet maybe the 13th? I am traveling to Albuquerque on the 14th, and maybe out of just because of self-service, I may not be able to participate that day.
We have a board meeting on the 13th.
And the 14th is the second Wednesday of the month. I don't know if that's an open day or not.
It is not. The first and third Wednesdays are open on the calendar. I realize that means meeting next week.
If we meet next week on the 7th, that's also the day of the Moore v. Harper Supreme Court case, which is very interesting. And we might want to, anybody who listens in might want to give us a report on that. That's about.
Hopefully we won't have a lot to talk about there.
That sounds good to me.
Neil, does first Wednesday, I know you have some Wednesdays, first and third Wednesdays?
Right. You're saying in the morning, or you're saying evening?
Ideally evening.
For the regular meeting of this group?
Yes. I'm just seeing if that sticks.
Okay, mornings work great for me on Wednesdays. Evenings don't. Kind of any Wednesday.
To make these meetings accessible to people who work traditional hours, how would you feel about at least doing a noon time?
I'm great with evening meetings. I'm just lobbying against Wednesday in particular, but and maybe noon would work. Others might have a better insight into what we'll get. I mean, we have pretty good representation right now, but we'd love for some of the, especially the presentations, to get more. I don't know, let others talk.
Barbara?
No, I just was going to say, call on me later. I have something after this.
Okay. Beth, I don't know what evenings we have. I know most of my weekday evenings are, well, I know the state calendar is, weekday evenings are trashed.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's pretty much the first and third Wednesday evenings. That's all that's open at this time in terms of evenings. Of course, I'm not including weekends.
What about Thursday evenings?
Nope.
Nope.
So, you
Um,
know, this also, it's traditional work hours, but I know it also puts a burden on Beth to be working during the day and then work in the evening or, you know,
Yeah.
it's not traditional hours if you're working, Beth. I don't know if people would be interested in early morning. It would put a time limit on when we finish.
I can go June.
Well,
I
what,
like June.
what's wrong with a Wednesday like today? The Wednesday seemed during the daytime seemed to work for most of us.
Could we do Wednesday noon? Maybe start at 11:45?
And the first and the third would be better than the second. That's when Jeffco has their usual meetings are on the second.
Hour over the.
So start with Wednesday, the 7th, 11:45.
Great.
I know I can't be there then, just FYI.
Is that Joanne, is that an always, or is that just this particular?
It's an always.
Is Wednesday noon?
Wednesdays, I've got something else scheduled every, first Wednesday of every month is a scheduling conflict.
But the second Wednesday would work for you, Joanne?
Not in this particular, not in December. Normally it would be great, but not in December.
Okay.
So is 10 o'clock next week gonna work? Did we discuss that?
No, there are
I
people
can't do that.
There are people that can't do that.
Are we jumping the gun by trying to schedule something the public can attend right now when we don't have our exact format set?
Yeah,
And so if we could go ahead with the 10 o'clock on one of the days that's available, till we have a little more format structure set, maybe that would be better.
We would have a public meeting. on
I
this.
think we need,
Karen, you just got blurred.
oh, I was just gonna say, I'd like to see us get our ducks in a row before we set it up as a public meeting. You know, and I don't say that in order to exclude anybody, but I think we've got I think we've already kind of focused on some areas where we feel like we need some additional information. We need to be able to kind of get some idea of what we need to know in order to be able to decide what options for directions we want to head. And, maybe for December, we can continue to have the meetings at 10 o'clock and then have a little better plan by the time we finish with that second December meeting, where we can say, okay, we're ready for prime time to invite a broader audience for those who are interested in participating. And at that point can look more closely at, do we want to do it at lunchtime? What's an evening meeting going to look like? I personally like the lunch hour idea just because I think that allows Beth to be able to not have to have another evening meeting, but
don't worry about me.
Well, but yeah.
What about the 6th? I mean, it's very close, but if people can't make it on a Wednesday, how is the Tuesday?
I will not be here on a Tuesday during the day.
Tuesday morning doesn't work for me.
That's where we're meeting.
That's one of the few times of the week, so keep trying.
Yeah.
Georgia runoff day.
Who is, somebody said they could not make the Wednesday, the 7th at 10. Who was that?
Bear and Joanne.
Farah and Joanne.
And
Sue, apparently.
And Mary Ann.
Okay.
That's just that day. I already had some things scheduled that I couldn't come.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
nobody's going to be able to make any of these meetings at any times, and I apologize, I got here late, I'm on the wrong time zone. Why don't, and this is pretty bold, but what about like a Saturday for just a few weeks until you get your situations together? Do a Saturday morning at 10 or something. Is that awful? I mean, I know we all like to do it during the week, but as I'm listening to everybody, that doesn't sound like that's going to work. Wow, that brought silence.
That brings silence because I've promised my husband I will try to treat this like a job and work 5 days a week.
What about if you,
maybe just
if you have a meeting where everybody can meet, and then for those of us who can't be there, can you just summarize everything, or can we listen? Can we
Absolutely.
get information
Yeah.
and just do it that way?
Yeah.
And what about a
Do we
Friday?
record
instead
these
of
meetings?
Saturday?
Did we already talk about the 14th? I can't remember.
That's a bad.
Yes, I think
Yeah.
Karen said she's going to be traveling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Neil
have
can't
another
do
meeting
Wednesday
that
morning,
day, so I can't do that either.
Yeah,
And
we
Wednesday,
already
the
have-
7th, later than 10 o'clock, like noon, a noon hour meeting on Wednesday, the 7th.
That works.
Yeah.
That would work for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do we want noon? Do we want noon or 11:45?
Noon would work for me. Once I get out of my cast, I have another commitment on Wednesday mornings that I'm home by 12.
Great.
Okay. Wednesday, the 7th at noon. And I think we're going to talk about our 3 threads and how we want to go forward from there. And there's a lot of stuff in the chat. My recommendation is that folks save the chat.
Unnecessary. We get a copy of it and we will send it out. The
Fantastic.
chat box text along with a link to the recording.
Wonderful. So Jennifer, you can catch up. And Jennifer, I think you have my number. You want to give me a call?
Wow.
Sure. I will. do.
Okay.
Thanks. Sorry.
Anything else urgent for the moment?
Stay warm.
Stay warm, everybody.
Yes.
Absolutely. And thank you, everyone. You all bring so much background and expertise. Jennifer did not get a chance to introduce herself, but she is brand new to Colorado, having organized 400 poll watchers in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Yay.
450 in our whole
Four-
county.
Four-
Wonderful.
450. So she brings another wealth of expertise to this group. So
Great.
thank you. See you in a week.
Thank you, Maud.
Great.
Do you
We'll
send
get
out
the link out to everybody.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.